On December 18, 2018, when the worst blizzard in 30 years buried the small town of Cedar Falls, Montana, under 4 feet of snow, 34-year-old Rebecca Martinez kissed her 2 young children goodnight for what would be the very last time. Rebecca wasn't supposed to be out that night. The Weather Service had issued dire warnings: stay indoors, avoid all travel. But when her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, called in tears about her heating system failing, Rebecca didn't hesitate. That was just who she was. A single mother who worked double shifts at the local diner, yet somehow always found time to help others. Her 8-year-old daughter Emma watched from the frosted window as Mom backed her old Honda Civic out of the driveway. She promised she'd be back in an hour, Emma would later tell investigators, her small voice barely above a whisper. She said we'd make hot chocolate when she got home. Rebecca's younger son, 6-year-old Tyler, was already asleep, clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur, the one Rebecca had bought him for his birthday just 2 months earlier, even though money was tight. She'd worked extra shifts for weeks to afford it because seeing her children smile was worth more than any sacrifice. The drive to Mrs. Henderson's house should have taken 15 minutes. Rebecca had made this journey countless times before, past Miller's farm, around the bend by the old oak tree, then straight down Maple Street. She knew these roads like the back of her hand. But that night, as the wind howled and snow fell in thick, blinding sheets, those familiar roads became a maze of white. Visibility dropped to mere feet. The temperature plummeted to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. At 8:47 p.m., Rebecca's cell phone pinged one final time, a text message to her sister. "Almost there. This storm is getting bad. Love you guys." It was the last anyone would hear from Rebecca Martinez. But what happened next would haunt Cedar Falls for 5 long years until a routine snow removal operation unearthed something that would change everything. When Rebecca failed to return home that night, her children waited by the window until dawn. Emma, wise beyond her 8 years, finally called her Aunt Linda when Tyler started crying for Mommy. Linda rushed over, her heart already sinking. Rebecca never broke a promise to her kids, never. The search began immediately, despite the raging blizzard. Sheriff David Kowalski had known Rebecca since she was a teenager. She'd babysit his own kids during summer breaks. She was the kind of person who'd give you her last dollar if you needed it, he'd later recall, his voice thick with emotion. We were going to find her. But the storm fought them every step of the way. Rescue teams battled whiteout conditions and temperatures that could kill an exposed person in minutes. They searched Mrs. Henderson's neighborhood first. Nothing. They checked the route Rebecca would have taken. Still nothing. Snowdrifts reached second-story windows. Cars became invisible burial mounds. Days turned into weeks. The community rallied around Emma and Tyler, who were now staying with their Aunt Linda. Local businesses donated food and supplies for search teams. Volunteers from 3 counties joined the effort. They used everything: helicopters, snowmobiles, search dogs, even military-grade thermal imaging equipment borrowed from the National Guard. "We must have covered 100 square miles," remembered volunteer coordinator Janet Williams. "Every ravine, every back road, every possible place that car could have ended up. It was like she just vanished." Mrs. Henderson, the elderly neighbor Rebecca was trying to help, was racked with guilt. "If I hadn't called," she sobbed to reporters. "If I just waited until morning." But those who knew Rebecca understood. Even if Mrs. Henderson hadn't called, Rebecca would have found another way to help someone that night. It was simply who she was. 3 months later, when spring finally melted the mountain of snow, searchers were certain they'd find Rebecca's Honda. They'd find answers. They'd find closure for 2 heartbroken children who still asked when Mommy was coming home. Instead, they found absolutely nothing. No car, no personal belongings,
No trace that Rebecca Martinez ever drove down those roads that terrible night. It was as if the storm had swallowed her whole, leaving behind only questions and 2 children who would grow up wondering what happened to the most important person in their world.
5 years is a long time when you're waiting for answers. Emma Martinez Johnson, now 13, had learned to navigate life without her mother's guiding hand. She'd become the little mother to Tyler, now 11, helping him with homework and making sure he brushed his teeth. Their Aunt Linda had officially adopted them, giving them stability and love, but nothing could fill the Rebecca-shaped hole in their lives. Emma kept her mother's picture in her bedroom, Rebecca smiling in her diner uniform, Tyler on her hip, Emma hugging her leg. "I talk to her sometimes," Emma confided to her school counselor. "I tell her about my grades, about Tyler's soccer games. I pretend she can hear me." The community never forgot. Every December 18th, the anniversary of Rebecca's disappearance, someone would leave flowers at the spot where her car was last seen. The diner where she worked kept her favorite coffee mug, the one that said "World's Greatest Mom," sitting on the counter. Her manager, Frank Delacroix, refused to move it. "Rebecca's not gone," he'd insist. "She's just not here yet." But as the years passed, the searches became less frequent. The news crews stopped calling. The missing person posters faded and were eventually covered by newer notices. Cedar Falls slowly moved forward, though they never truly moved on. Detective Maria Gonzalez inherited Rebecca's case when Sheriff Kowalski retired. She'd studied every report, interviewed every witness, followed up on every tip, including the heartbreaking false leads that occasionally surfaced. A car pulled from a lake 3 counties over. A woman matching Rebecca's description spotted at a gas station in Wyoming. Each time, the family's hopes would surge, only to be crushed when the lead went cold. The hardest part, Detective Gonzalez reflected, wasn't the mystery itself. It was watching those kids grow up in limbo. Emma started high school this year. Tyler learned to ride a bike, made honor roll, joined the soccer team. All these milestones Rebecca should have been there for. The case officially remained open, but resources were limited. New crimes demanded attention. The town's small police department couldn't dedicate the same manpower to a 5-year-old disappearance, no matter how much they wanted to. Life in Cedar Falls had found a new rhythm, one that included the quiet ache of an unsolved mystery. But sometimes, the most extraordinary discoveries come when we least expect them. March 23, 2024. The sun was just breaking over the Montana horizon when snowplow operator Tommy Chen, a 42-year-old father of 3 who'd been clearing these roads for nearly 2 decades, started his routine spring cleanup along Route 16 just outside Cedar Falls. The winter had been particularly harsh, leaving massive snowdrifts and debris scattered across the backcountry roads. Tommy's job was to clear away the remnants, fallen branches, roadway gravel scattered by snowplows, and anything else that might pose a hazard to drivers. "I was working near that old logging trail, maybe 2 miles past Miller's farm. There's this steep ravine there, probably 30 feet deep. I was pushing snow and debris when I saw something that didn't belong. At first, it looked like just another piece of twisted metal, maybe part of an old fence or farming equipment. But as Tommy maneuvered his plow for a better angle, the morning sunlight caught something that made his blood run cold. The distinctive curve of a car's side mirror, the faded blue paint of what had once been a Honda Civic. Tommy immediately shut off his equipment and called 911. Within 30 minutes, the ravine was swarming with police, paramedics, and the county coroner. The car had been completely hidden for 5 years, buried under layers of snow, ice, and debris in a spot so remote that even the most thorough search teams had never thought to look there. But this discovery raised more questions than it answered. The car's position defied logic. It wasn't on any route Rebecca would have taken to reach Mrs. Henderson's house. In fact, it was in the complete opposite direction, down a logging road that had been officially closed for repairs since November 2018. Detective Gonzalez arrived at the scene within an hour. As the wrecker slowly pulled the Honda from its icy grave, she felt her pulse quicken. After 5 years of dead ends and false hopes, they finally had something concrete. But as she peered through the cracked windshield into the vehicle's interior, her excitement quickly turned to bewilderment. The car was empty, no sign of Rebecca Martinez, and stranger still, there were personal items scattered throughout the interior that suggested this wasn't a simple case of losing control in a blizzard.
Inside Rebecca's Honda Civic, investigators found a scene that defied every theory they'd constructed over the past 5 years. This wasn't the chaotic aftermath of a weather-related accident. It was something far more puzzling and disturbing. Rebecca's purse sat neatly on the passenger seat, undisturbed. Her wallet contained $43 and her driver's license, ruling out robbery. Her cell phone was found wedged between the seat cushions, its battery long dead, but the device itself intact. Most mysteriously, her winter coat, the heavy parka she'd grabbed before leaving home that night, was folded and placed in the back seat, as if she had removed it deliberately. What we found didn't match a panicked situation, Detective Gonzalez explained to Rebecca's family in a tense meeting at the police station. Emma, now 13, sat between her Aunt Linda and brother Tyler, her young face etched in confusion and hope. "We positioning of everything suggests your mother had time to organize her belongings, but why she would have done that, and where she went afterward?" The car's location remained the biggest mystery. The logging road where Tommy found it had been barricaded since late November 2018, nearly a month before Rebecca's disappearance. County records showed the barriers were intact and properly maintained. Yet somehow, Rebecca's car had ended up at the bottom of that ravine. Forensics experts combed through every inch of the vehicle. They found no signs of struggle, no blood, no indication of violence. The damage to the car was consistent with a controlled descent down the ravine. Not a high-speed crash, but rather as if someone had carefully driven it over the edge. But perhaps most haunting was what they found in Rebecca's handwriting on a fast food napkin wedged under the floor mat. A partial note that read, "Tell the kids I love them more than," before the writing trailed off. The ink had smeared from moisture, but forensic analysts confirmed it was Rebecca's handwriting. The discovery sent shockwaves through Cedar Falls. After years of wondering if Rebecca had simply gotten lost in the storm, the evidence suggested something far more complex. Had she been taken somewhere against her will, only to have her car dumped in this remote location? Had she been running from something or someone? Or was there another explanation, one that no one had considered? Emma clutched her mother's returned purse, breathing in the faint scent of Rebecca's favorite vanilla perfume that still lingered after all these years. "She's still out there," Emma whispered, her voice filled with a mixture of determination and desperate hope. "This proves she's still out there somewhere." But as investigators dug deeper into the evidence, they would uncover a revelation that would shatter everything the Martinez family thought they knew about that terrible night in December. The break in Rebecca Martinez's case came from an unexpected source, a dying confession from someone the investigation had never even considered. 3 months after the car's discovery, Harold, or Hank Peterson, a 70-year-old retired mechanic from Cedar Falls, was admitted to the hospital with late-stage cancer. Facing his final days, Hank asked to speak with Detective Gonzalez. What he revealed would finally solve the 5-year-old mystery, though the truth was more heartbreaking than anyone could have imagined. Rebecca never made it to Mrs. Henderson's house that night. She made it to mine instead, Hank confessed, his weathered hands shaking as he spoke. She was my secret, he explained. For 8 months before her disappearance, they'd been quietly dating. Rebecca, fiercely protective of her children and reputation in the small town, had insisted on keeping their relationship private until she was sure it was serious. She was supposed to come see me after helping the old lady, Hank continued, tears streaming down his face. But the storm got worse. Her car slid off my driveway into that ditch behind my property. She wasn't hurt bad, just shaken up and cold. The revelation painted an entirely different picture of that December night. Rebecca had managed to get to Hank's house, but her car was stuck. As the blizzard raged, they made a decision that would haunt Hank forever. They'd drive her car to the abandoned logging road and leave it there, making it look like an accident. Rebecca would stay at his place until the storm passed. Then they'd find her, safe but stranded. It was her idea, Hank sobbed. She said people would ask too many questions if they found her car at my place. She was worried about what folks would think, worried it might affect her kids somehow. We were going to go back for the car after the storm, but Rebecca Martinez never made it through that night. Hank revealed that she'd suffered what appeared to be a heart attack around midnight, likely brought on by the stress of the accident, the extreme cold, and an undiagnosed heart condition that would only be discovered during the autopsy Rebecca never received. Panicked and alone, Hank made a terrible decision. He'd buried Rebecca on his property and maintained the fiction that she'd simply vanished in the storm. For 5 years, he'd lived with the guilt while Emma and Tyler grew up believing their mother might still be alive somewhere. The final searches of Hank's property confirmed his confession. Rebecca Martinez was laid to rest beneath an old oak tree in Hank's backyard, the same tree she'd admired during their quiet evenings together. At Rebecca's long-awaited funeral, the entire town of Cedar Falls turned out to say goodbye. Emma and Tyler, now finally able to grieve properly, placed wildflowers on their mother's grave, the same kind Rebecca used to pick with them during summer walks. She was trying to protect us, even at the end. She was always trying to protect everyone, Emma said through her tears. The mystery that had haunted Cedar Falls for 5 years was finally solved, but it left residents with difficult questions about secrets, shame, and the lengths people go to protect those they love. Rebecca Martinez had vanished not because of the blizzard, but because of a tragic series of events that spiraled beyond anyone's control. Rebecca's story reminds us that sometimes the most ordinary decisions can lead to extraordinary consequences. A simple choice to help a neighbor, to keep a relationship private, to protect one's children from gossip. All of these human motivations, combined with a freak storm and a medical emergency, to create a mystery that captivated an entire community. But perhaps the real question isn't what happened to Rebecca Martinez that December night. Perhaps it's what we learn about ourselves when tragedy strikes. How do we balance our desire for privacy with our community's need to help? How do we protect the ones we love while still living authentically? What would you have done if you were in Rebecca's shoes that night? If Rebecca's story moved you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more untold mysteries and human stories that remind us of our shared humanity. Share your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. And remember,
Behind every mystery is a real person with a real family that deserves to be remembered not just for how their story ended, but for how beautifully they lived.